Hi guys, welcome back and welcome to PyHacks, part of Hutsons-Hacks tutorials. So in the last couple of weeks, we've been exploring data structures in Python. We're finally going to look at sets. So sets in Python and how to work with sets. Okay, so I'm going to open up my Spider window and I'm going to get started with the tutorial. Okay, so we've got a blank Spider notebook here, or a Spider code editor, should I say. So what we're going to do is, firstly, we're going to create our first set. So we're going to work with perhaps some films today to work with sets. So just to describe what a set is, so a set is unordered and it's unindexed, and it's used to store multiple values in a single variable. Due to the fact that they're unordered, you can't be sure in what order sets will appear. So sets are normally used for perhaps storing lookup values because they don't allow duplicates. So they need to be unique items in the sets. And we'll discover that as we go through the tutorial. So we're going to create a films object set, and we're going to pass in. So in sets like dictionaries, you actually use the curly braces to create a set. So we're going to use Jurassic Park, just a few examples. Shawshank Redemption. Let's say Green Mile. Let's go a bit Stephen King, a bit. Is it Spielberg? The Stevens, eh? Spielberg on Jurassic Park. So films now. In my browser here, you can see I've got these three films, and they're stored as a type of set. And you can see by clicking on this object that I've got my strings and the size of the characters in that set. Okay, so what happens if I create another set and I try and add a duplicate this time? So we'll call this duplicate film. Dubset, shall we call it? Dubset. Let's do that. So let's say Jurassic Park again. Shawshank Redemption. And let's do 2 of Green Mile. Okay, so see what happens in a second. Okay, I'm going to F9 this to run this particular line. Okay, just let me run those two. So you can see that actually, although we've passed Green Mile and the item size should be 4, it's actually 3. So what this is showing us is actually it won't allow the addition of duplicate values, which makes it really useful for some kind of lookup, albeit lookups sometimes if they had a key value pair, you'd want to use a dictionary for those. But actually for a unique list of items or a unique lookup, this is really useful. And if you wanted it unchangeable, really you'd want a tuple or a tuple. Okay, so let's look at accessing our set items then. So accessing set items. How do we get to the data? So one way we could do it is by looping. So as you've seen in the other tutorials, most ways of obtaining each value in a set or a dictionary or a list or a tuple is to use for loops to iterate through them. So for each set item in my films set, we could just print the set item. You can see on my console window here, it's now run Jurassic Park, Green Mile, and Shawshank Redemption. You could then just make it a little bit more interesting to the user. Current movie is, or film, if you're in this country, is. Add a placeholder in, because we're going to use the format as we've done before. Format our set item. So we're going to say in this little placeholder here, give me each one of those iterated values, and you'll see that in a second. The current movie film is Jurassic Park, Green Mile, etc. You could do, like you say, with a lot. If you use natural language processing or do a lot of text processing, They use a lot of for loops to go through each element in a list or wherever you're storing the data in whatever structure to do things like string extraction, so to extract new line characters or breaks, or to do the removal and tokenization of that text. Again, that's a little bit more advanced than we're going into today. This is more of a starter, getting you into Python course. Okay, so how do you change items in a set? You can't, okay? So once a set is created, you can't change its items. So in that way, it's a bit like a tuple. It's immutable, so you can't actually make changes after the set's been initialized into memory. However, you can add items, so you can't actually change the values here. These are now hard coded, but you can add to a set. So let's explore that. So say I want films.add, and I watched a really funny Will Ferrell film the other day called Eurovision. So Eurovision, if for those people that don't know, is a song contest that's held in Europe, and it's about an Icelandic pop band called Fire Saga. Also, a country that's close to my heart. I love Iceland. It's a beautiful place. So, films that add. So you can see now I've done this add method, and now you can see that my set is now size of 4, and it's been added. So it's been added onto the films because we're operating on that film's original set, and we're using add to make changes to the original set to add. Okay, so how do I add an item from another set then? Add items from other sets. So say I wanted to like pass in a set of horror films. And again, this is more around, you probably wouldn't be working with films in your real data, but these could be lookups. So in the NHS, we have a lot of lookup data items, things like consultant specialties, etc. I thought I'd make this a bit more generic than healthcare data. So let's say we've got 2 horror films, the Dusk Till Dawn and The Shining. Films. So what we're going to use now is the update method. So we're saying for the existing film set, update it with this other set of items, so horror films. Okay. Oops, I need to run both. Okay. So now we've got this horror films set stored separately in memory. As you can see, we created The Shining and Dusk Till Dawn. Now we've got all these films added. As you can see though, as it said before, there's no implicit ordering to this, so they'll appear in different orders, etc. Okay. So another way to do it, and what's good about the update method is that you don't actually have to use a set. So the update method works with other types of data structures. So we're going to create thrillers this time, but look at the difference. What we're going to use, what brackets we're going to use. So if you've watched any of the other tutorials, those square brackets mean a list. So create a list. So we're going to create another list of thrillers, and I don't know, I quite like my Scandi crime novels and stuff, Joe Nesbo, etc. And Stieg Larsson. We're going to use the girl with the dragon tattoo. Hopefully I'm spelling this right. And then we're going to use the films existing set, so set of size 6. We're going to use that same update method again, but this time we're going to update it with a list item, because the list there, I've got curly braces, which means they're a set. Okay. So you can see now I've got a list of these films. It specifically says that the data items list all these are sets. And now I've got set of size 8. So okay, so what we've done so far is create our first set object. We've talked about accessing set items one by one, so looping through the set. Adding set items via various methods. The next thing we're going to do is look at removing set items. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to perhaps back up my original films. So I'll probably call it films original, films O, say. Films.copy. Sorry, I'm doing all notation there to create variables. I'll start to do the old. I've been doing some R development this morning, so mixing methods and all that. Right, remove method. Films dot remove. So you use the remove method. And we're going to purge Jurassic Park. Okay. So I'm going to select these lines here and I'm going to F9 just to run those. You can see now that my films set no longer contains Jurassic Park. And it was 8 before, as you can see from the original. Now we're operating on the films object that we had prior. It's got 7. Another way you could do that, so we've used the remove method. We could also use the discard method. And again, this is just to explore all the different types of ways that you can remove items from a set. Films, let's use the films again. Let's use discard. Let's get rid of the bone collector this time. Good film if you've never not seen it. It's got Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie in it. Print films. Okay. What I'm going to do now is F9 that. So now you can see that I've now got a set of size 6. So the bone collector has now been purged. Remember in the previous tutorials, if you've watched them, you can use the pop method. And if you don't pass anything to the pop method, can you think about what happens? So I'll show you in a second. Okay. So what did that pop method do? So it removes the last item in the set, or what it thinks is the last item in that set. Another way you can do it, so say I want to purge the whole set. You can do this like we've done before, films clear. And what this is going to do is keep the films set in memory, but it'll be an empty set once this command's been executed. So as you can see at the moment, it's a set of 5 items, so 5 objects in that set. If I F9 now, you can see that I've got a size 0 set, and it's an empty set that I could then work with and add items to again. If I really didn't want that in memory, so if I want to get rid of it from the environment, get rid of films from the environment. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to del films. Dill? What's a dill? I'm going to del films. So you can see that now films has completely disappeared from this. Okay, we've already covered looping through sets. So here, by accessing set items, so actually printing out the set items or doing something with them. So I won't go into that again in greater depth, but essentially the general syntax for a set loop is for the iterator in the object, so the set, do something to that iterator. If it was mathematical and you were going through numbers and you had a function that you wanted to operate, you could use a lambda function, which we'll cover later on, to do that in things like data frames, etc. But essentially, if you wanted to do it by each iteration, you could do things like raising it to the power of, taking the log of a number, calculating the distance from the mean of each of the observations to come up with things like the squared difference if you're doing linear regression. The world's your oyster. Okay. Anywho, back onto task. So now we're going to talk about joining sets. So joining sets is a bit like I don't know if you know SQL, a bit like a SQL join. And we'll go into joins and different join types later on when we start working with pandas. So, oops. So I've got something like a film index. I'm just going to give it a set, and we're going to set the index items to 1 and 2. So thrillers with index, or IDX, shall we call it. So horror. So I know I've got 2 horror films in there. I'm going to do a union film index. So what this is going to do is essentially just create a union. I don't know if you've ever done SQL. Merge two items together of the same size, so they've got to be the same size. If I had a film index of 1, 2, 3, and I had 1 horror film in there or 2 horror films, the union method would fall over. But because there's 2 items in each, what this is going to do is create a set of 4. Okay, so you can see now we've got this index, thrillers with an index. So I've got 1, 2 integers, string values, the Shining and Dust Till Dawn. Okay, another way I could do it is keeping only the duplicates. So there's a method called intersection, and I'll talk to you about this in a second. Keeping duplicates. So we're gonna recreate this film 1 and film 2 because we've overridden that one. I'll go back to the original, and then I'm gonna also create 2 copies. So we're gonna use the copy method. Okay, I'm just copying these for time and speed. I'll explain it in a second. So keeping duplicates, we're going to create this set of these string sets. We're going to create copies. So essentially we use the copy method on each one of the original values, and we're going to store it in a separate variable here. Okay. Let's just run that again. So the way to keep only duplicates, and this will act when you use the underscore update command, it will act on the original data frame. So film 1, it's going to make changes to film 1 because it's a method on film 1. So you can see that there's 2 methods here. We've got intersection, which will just return it back to you in the console as a print, more as a print statement, and they've got intersection update, which will update the original films. But because we want to do that, we're gonna go for it. Okay. So we're going to do film 2 now. So what this will do is it will return only the unique values in film 1. So film 1 essentially, because we've got, so it's going to keep duplicate values, sorry. So because we've got in film 1 Scream, and in film 2 we've got Scream, and we've got Jurassic Park and Forrest Gump, it's only going to keep from film 1 Scream because these 2 match, so it's going to keep the duplicates. Okay, so you can see, now we've got Scream only, so it's a set of 1. Because as I've said, Scream and Scream are duplicates, so it will keep that and update it by using this .update command. Okay, and if you wanted to create the inverse of that, so keep every unique item bar duplicates, so you want to purge the duplicates. Again, there could be some better naming conventions going off here, but now because we've amended and altered the original film 1, we're going to use the copy, and this will then get altered as well. That's the reason why I've created a copy, because then I needed the original to do this operation on. So film 1 copy then, and I'm going to use the symmetry, so the symmetric difference. And again, same, you've got a symmetric difference which returns it just, and then the update function as well. So now I'm going to pass in F2 copy, and let's just go back to what this is doing. So what we'll have is, because it's going to do the opposite of the other function, so returning Scream and Scream, this one's going to return Jurassic Park, Forrest Gump and Shawshank. So if I do F9, so F1 copy now should have, yeah, the unique values in there. So Shawshank Redemption, Forrest Gump and Jurassic Park. And this is why sets are powerful, because they let you create only unique lists, and they let you contrast between two sets to come up with unique items. And then essentially, then if you add a key in a dictionary, you could then join it on, left join it on, or inner join probably is a better way of doing it. Inner join it onto that data to bring back only those unique values for those unique items. Or alternately, if you wanted to explore the duplicates in your data, you could use the intersection update to do a similar type of join. Again, we'll get onto some of that later on. Don't bother yourself from now. So I'll just finally, most of the kind of set items are covered. There's not as much around looping as there are in lists and dictionaries. We'll probably just touch on logical operators. So actually testing for Boolean output, so true or false. So again, I'm going to restore, and again, I'll keep copying this back over. I'm going to restore the original data structures, so the original sets. So what we're going to look for here, and this will return false. So we're going to use the isDisjoint method. It'll return true if none of the items are present in both sets. Otherwise, it returns false. Okay. So let's use a work example here. So we're going to call a disjoint function. And we're going to film1.isDisjoint. So you can see that this function, this method's come up. So it works on any iterable, and it will return a Boolean value, so a true or false. So if I want to disjoint with film2, then return false. So it's going to return a false because none of the items are present in both sets. Well, that's not true because there are items that are present in both sets. So Scream. So that will match. So that will return false. So you do it to check whether there's duplicates in this data set. So that's one way. So there's the isSubset method as well. And again, these are all documented on the PyPy website and other lookups. Right. So we've got the isSubset function, isSub. So what this does is it's a method that returns true if all the items in the set exist in a comparison set. So if all the items in film 1 exist in film 2, i.e. they're both similar sets or the same set, then return true. So this is what you do essentially. It's a way to check whether there's all, basically film 1 is exactly the same as film 2. And you'd probably want to do that sometimes if you were trying to compare if they had matching sets or if there was something missing in another set. Again, you'd probably think of other ways that you could use it. So isSub. So yeah, it's going to return true. Okay, because okay, let me just read that. I think I've got the right end of this thing. So it returns true if all the items in the set exist in a comparison set. Ah, okay. Sure, that should be false. If all the items, yeah, that's right. Why did it come up as true before? No, that is right. I've misinterpreted it. So film 1 is not it's not exactly the same as film 2, is it, in terms of sets? So it's going to return false. That's right. So if I was going to say, if I wanted to make it true, and there's a superset method as well. So the superset method returns true if all items in the specified set exist in the original set. So are they the same sets? It's essentially a similar operation to the is subset, sorry. But in this time, it's checking for direct duplication. Is superset. So I'm going to say is superset film 1 is superset. So is superset, and then you could just pass in the same film. So to make it true, I'm going to force it to be true here. Okay. That's bound to be true because film 1 is the same as film 1, so you'd expect all the items to match. If you wanted to make it true, so actually the real comparison is super false, we'd say film 1, and this is going to return false, is superset film 2. Okay. Yeah. So it's going to be false because they're not exactly the same. So that's how you use the logical operators as well to check duplication in sets, to see if they're, the subsets, direct subsets of those sets. So, if I had some of those items in, but not all of them, then some of these will return false. Again, what I do is play around with how to utilize these and how to use them in practice. But I find it's best for checking over massive data sets or sets of items to look for uniqueness or repetition in those sets. Anyway, guys, that brings me to the end of today's session, and actually it's the end of data structures. So next week, what we're going to be looking at, or in the next tutorial, should I say, is conditional statements or conditional logic. So we're going to learn how to do the if, else, and else if commands in Python. And again, this will catch you out when you first start in Python. Indentation is key. So if you've got a if inside a for loop, inside an if statement, inside a for loop, you've got to make sure the indentation is right. So certain text editors like Spider and PyCharm and VS Code help you out there. But yeah, even the most experienced programmers still fall foul of this, so don't be too hard on yourselves. All right, guys, stay safe, take it easy, and I'll see you on the next tutorial. And please hit subscribe. Thanks.